This is Castle 1. Race officer speaking.
Lane line is on boundary up ahead, 35 seconds out.
A bit lower and faster here.
That's a good one, Jimmy.
Still gaining on the lane line there.
We're looking at 10.5, 42. Matching him on the boundary, yeah. Copy.
Welcome back, podcast listeners. Thank you for joining us back for part 2 of our chat with America's Cup legend Murray Jones. As always, if you haven't listened to part 1, then don't get ahead of yourself. Jump back and give it a listen, or you'll really be missing out. Before we pick things up with Murray, if you're enjoying the podcast, then please do head over and show your support at buymeacoffee.com/sailing podcast. It's super quick and easy, and your support allows us to stay ad-free so we can keep on delivering these uninterrupted chats with the biggest names in the sport. If you've done so already, a huge thanks for the coffees. If not, why not head over and take a look? Your support really makes a difference. Right, back to Murray, and we pick things up with Swiss Cup team Alinghi, this time in Valencia, trying to defend the cup but about to lose a pivotal member of the team.
To tell you the truth, we were all really disappointed in Russell for sort of leaving us, you know. It's a 40-mile race, the deed of gift race, and they said that was the first time they actually managed to sail 40 miles without breaking down. We just built up speed and bore away, and then I just saw the bow starting to go in and I thought, this is not good, you know.
Well, your cup run continued, didn't it? I mean, Alinghi defended in Valencia 4 years later, but without Russell. I mean, what do you remember about that scenario? What went on there with Russell leaving Alinghi?
Well, that was tough. That was tough for all of us as a sailing team because, you know, we all looked up to Russell. He was, you know, he was our leader, and we had massive respect for him. And, you know, to tell you the truth, we were all really disappointed in Russell for sort of leaving us, you know. And we were sad. We were all very sad, you know. It was the last thing we wanted. And, you know, but he had his reasons and we sort of didn't understand them, but I guess we didn't have to understand them. And once that was behind us and we got our head around it, we said, righto, well, now it's up to us, and, you know, this is going to be harder without Russell. We've won 3 cups with Russell. Hang on, you know, like this is our opportunity to show that we can win one without him. And so that was, and now it was a new challenge. So each cup was a new challenge for us, you know, like, as I said, you know, we won the first one in San Diego. It was for New Zealand. It was great. There was a lot of pressure to defend it. Then we came back as Alinghi to win it, which was a massive challenge again. And now all of a sudden we're presented with a new challenge of winning without Russell. And so it sort of added some more excitement to say, righto, we've got to work really hard here. And that's what we did. Yeah. And we just kept it tight.
Yeah, added a bit of jeopardy, that's for sure.
Yeah, and the Valencia Cup 2007 was an awesome cup. In some ways it was my favourite. It was really, really good racing. The lead up for it was really fun with the acts that they had and the different regattas and the fleet racing and things like that. I think it was one of the best cups ever.
Yeah, it was good. I don't know if we'll see that again, so many boats. I mean, the nationality rules for the current cup, when you think about them, I mean, they're strict, aren't they? What do you think about that? Is that right? Or do you think it's a bit of a barrier to entry for some nations?
I think it is a barrier. It does make it difficult. You know, I like the idea of having many entries for the America's Cup rather than just a few, even if they're good quality. I like the idea if you could have 9 or 10 entries to the Cup, and if it's restricting, I think it's not such a good thing. I don't really think it has to be that nationalistic. I mean, people attach themselves to the team anyway, you know. If it's got the New Zealand flag or the American flag or whatever, the Swiss flag, the country attaches themselves to that. I think some nationality representation is important, but I don't think it has to be everyone on the crew.
Right, well, the 2007 defence was another success against Team New Zealand. 5-2, the final result, and you picked up the cup for the fourth time. 4 campaigns, 2 different teams, 4 wins. I mean, you must have felt like you could do no wrong.
Yeah, I mean, it was sort of interesting because you sort of start to think you've got a good formula. You know, and you're thinking it's not that difficult. I mean, obviously it's a bit arrogant saying that, but we weren't being super clever or anything, but we weren't doing things dumb. And we could see other teams in their programs from the outside and thinking, wow, they're making it complicated, or why would they do that? And, you know, and from our point of view, we were doing sort of what we thought was obvious, and it was a good formula. And so, you know, that was the way we wanted to continue. Yeah.
Well, let's talk about what happened next. For some of our listeners that may not know, what happened after 2007? I mean, how did the Cup end up as just Alinghi versus Oracle?
Well, complicated as anything. Basically, Alinghi accepted a challenger from the Spanish club federation, and they didn't fulfil the technical requirements of being a club, I think. That's how it was, which is part of the deed of gift, America's Cup, very technical. All the lawyers, you know, look into every letter of the deed to figure that out, and Oracle basically looked at it and they thought that they could challenge that, and they did, and it went back and forward through the courts many times. Both Larry and Ernesto Berta really spent a fortune on lawyers in New York, and anyway, as a result of, in the end, they decided it was going to be a deed of gift. That's the default match, which is sailed in with no rules basically, except the boat can't be more than 90 feet wide and more than 90 feet long on the waterline, and basically that's that. And so all of a sudden, well, wow, this is reality, you know. But this went on for months and months and months and months, and are we on plan A, are we on plan B, you know, are we going to go back to what we originally were going to sail the next America's Cup boats in, which we were going to change to a 90-foot monohull from the current boats that we sailed in Valencia in 2007? Or are we going to go to this deed of gift? And yeah, in the end we were in the deed of gift boats, and so all of a sudden it was just a totally different ball game, and what are we going to do? Yeah.
It was wonderfully mad, wasn't it? I mean, the deed of gift match saw 2 yachts being built, as you say, 90 foot long. Oracle, of course, running a wing. We hadn't seen many of them. I mean, talk to us about that process that saw Alinghi's multi-hull being built, and how out there did the whole thing feel?
You felt like you were pioneering, really, because nothing that big and that performance orientated had been built or sailed competitively. You know, as a day sailor, it's not an offshore boat. And so all of a sudden it was super interesting. The scope, you know, where do you start? What's sort of riding mode? There's no limits. And the 90 feet long is the waterline length. So, you know, I think our Alinghi boat was 115 feet long actually, and the Oracle boat was 120 feet long. And they end up with a trimaran, we end up with a catamaran, and as you said, they end up with a wing. We end up with a big wing-shaped mast, but, with a soft sail, which in the end, I think that was the difference between the two boats. It was more that than the fact that we had a catamaran, they had a trimaran. I think the wing was really the efficient thing that made their boat what it was. And, a little bit of luck went their way. They broke them. They had a conventional mast as well in their boat, and they were training in San Diego, and they broke their mast. They were developing the wing on the side as a possible thing. They broke their mast, and then they sort of didn't really have an alternative other than pursue the wing full on. So they stopped and fully committed to the wing, which I think was the turning point. Because if they'd gone on with parallel programs, I don't think they would have actually got the wing to a reliable stage that it would have. Yeah. They would have been happy using it, or it might have not, been good enough to get round the course. How it was a race against time. We'd actually done quite a lot more sailing than the Oracle Tri. And I think the first time, I know them obviously very well, the Oracle guys, and I think they said that it's a 40-mile race, the Deed of Gift race. And they said that was the first time they actually managed to sail 40 miles without breaking down. Yeah, it was the first race of the Cup. That's how the pioneering sort of aspect of the stage these boats were at. So it was pretty exciting. I mean, it was tough. We were sailing in Valencia in January or February or something, freezing cold. Yeah.
I was there covering it. I mean, it was exciting as a journalist. It felt like Oracle had really kind of swallowed the brave pill.
Yeah.
To tame that wing.
Yeah.
It was crazy, wasn't it? And Ernesto, of course, he was steering your boat. I mean, what was that like, your boat, to sail that 90-foot catamaran back in those days?
I mean, it was pretty nice to sail, actually. Obviously, if you look back now, you would have been more bold with the foils and put more lift on the foils and sail with an elevator on the rudder. We tried an elevator on the rudder at one stage, and we used it for like 1 day or 2 days or something, and then we got chicken and didn't use it. But if we had pursued a few more bold things like that, that would have been a game changer as well, But, there was so many things on your plate, you couldn't do everything.
Well, as you say, Alinghi lost that match, of course. Best of 3, lost 2-0. Your winning streak, Murray, had come to an end. I mean, how did that feel? I can imagine there may have been a bit of relief that it was kind of over.
It was in a way, but I was pretty disappointed, because I put a lot of effort into that campaign and like working with the design team and very integral in building the big masts and a lot of effort, and so you're still very disappointed, at the end of it. And and I didn't know, and Alinghi decided not to continue after that, and so I was sort of thinking, oh well, that's the end of that, America's Cup's sort of done.
Yeah, it wasn't though, was it? I mean, having sailed against Russell Coutts in BMW Oracle in Valencia for the next Cup, you moved teams and you were back with Russell at Oracle Team USA. How did that happen? How did that go down?
Well, I actually went skiing with him in Europe and for a day, and we stopped for lunch, and he just asked me, "Do you want to come and join an Oracle for the next Cup?" And I sort of thought, well, it was a little bit like when he first asked me the very first time. I said, yeah, okay, done. It's pretty well simple as that. So, yeah, I joined for Oracle, which was a funny feeling because for me, they were the enemy for the last 4 years with the Deed of Gift. There was a lot of ill feeling between the two teams, both teams. Well, Alinghi especially thought that we'd been attacked and forced to sail a Deed of Gift thing, and we were hoping that we'd continue the way we were with multiple teams and everything like that. So it was a funny feeling going into the Oracle team, and it was a little bit weird when you joined the team and you were in the same office with all these people that you're sort of enemies with.
You were still tight with Russell though.
Yeah.
I mean, the sailing madness wasn't over though, was it? I mean, this time, 72-foot foiling multi-hulls. I mean, what was your role in the San Francisco Cup in 2013? What was your role at Oracle?
Well, I was employed in the sailing team, and we sailed, we developed the 72-foot boat and the 45s as a training platform, and did the racing and the build-up racing in those 45s and the regattas, and I was a wing trimmer on Russell's boat, and Jimmy had another boat with another crew, and so we did a lot of sailing in the 45-footers, and that was great. And then by the time we developed the 72-footer, I was probably too old for the sailing, and it was quite physical, and so I slipped sort of out of the primary sailing mode, team mode, and more into the performance analysis sort of design coordination with the sailing team sort of role, which was super interesting as well. And as did Russell, really handed it over to Jimmy as the skipper, and so that's sort of the role I filled for that cup. But I was on board the 72 when we capsized it on about the
I was just about to ask you about
seventh day
that.
of sailing on the big boat, and that was a interesting experience. Yeah.
I mean, it's one of the most gripping interviews I think we've done on this podcast, has been listening to Jimmy Spittle talk about that capsizing of the AC-72 and floating out under the Golden Gate Bridge. I mean, such a dramatic moment. What are your memories of that drama and how it unfolded?
Well, firstly, I remember, I think it was our 7th day sailing on the 72 or something like that. So the thing was brand new. And we were learning the limitations. We didn't know the limitations, And we were up by the mile or so up from the Golden Gate Bridge, and the breeze had come up a bit uncomfortably strong, and we were sort of sitting there waiting. What shall we do? And because we'd never bore away, we had to bear away to go home, that was the problem. And that's obviously the risky thing in these big multi-hulls. In hindsight, we should have just waited. Anyway, I made the decision to have a go, which was completely the wrong decision and not the logical decision. It was like a bit of a shooting from the hip sort of decision, that not saying, rightio, well, potentially the whole campaign is resting on this next 2 minutes, and that's what happened, yeah. I think the sailing team was probably a little overconfident in the ability after sailing the AC-45s and stuff like that, and which was really, we should have known better, because we capsized them so many times, bearaways and that, and anyway, we bore away, and I just remember I was on the tramp at the back, and we started to bear away, and I thought, I'm not going to stay on the tramp here. I'm going to get into the leeward cockpit right aft, because I wasn't comfortable, and we just built up speed and bore away, and then I just saw the bow starting to go in, and I thought, this is not good, and then it dug right in, and I thought, well, we're going to capsize, and then for me it all slowed down, and I thought, wow, because I was, again, know quite a bit about the construction of the mast and everything like that, and we were actually going pitch poling forward, and I had time to think, well, this is going to be bad if the mast breaks, because we're going to end up crashing down on top of the mast, onto the water. We're going to be under the water. And so I had time to get right inside the cockpit in case that eventually happened. Anyway, and then the mast hit, and I could hear all these cracks and smashes and that, but the noise of it wasn't anything major structural. It was all minor, light things breaking. I thought, mast hasn't broken, that's good, And so then we were stuck there, And so then we had to, eventually climb down. I just climbed down the cockpit, so I don't like getting wet, so I sort of tried to get out dry, but eventually I had to jump in the water and get picked up by the chase boat. Yeah, but it was and then we couldn't ride it. We tried. The current was just ripping out at a couple of knots, and we got washed right out to sea. Ended up a couple of miles outside the Golden Gate Bridge, and it just took forever. Yeah. Eventually the mast did break, and the thing broke up, and we had to try and secure things and tow it back, and we, end up back at the base at, I don't know what it was, 2 a.m. or something. Yeah. So it was a pretty, interesting experience, and then in reality think, wow, now we've got a lot on because we are months and months behind. This boat's going to take a couple of months to repair. We've completely trashed one wing. Got another boat, in build, but it's a long way off. And, they were pioneering days of development of your boat. And so everyday sailing was important. We just thrown away, I don't know how long it was, but it was 6 weeks or something, yeah. So that was a pretty big disaster for the team. Set us back, So we sort of came in, from then on, we're on the back foot.
Was there a sense during that time that boundaries were shifting? Foiling, wing sails. I mean, you were a key interface, weren't you, between the sailing team and the design team. Did you sense that something special was underway design-wise during the build-up to San Francisco? Well,
we didn't design the boat around it being a foiling boat, and we'd spent a lot of effort into low windage of the platform, and we were actually sending people down, and I went back to New Zealand a couple of times, spying on Team New Zealand, which they obviously don't like too much, seeing their mates out there on boat following around, and they would Team New Zealand was developing the foiling for their boat, which eventually we realised that's what they were doing. And
did you see them do it in New Zealand?
When I went down, only one day they would have 2 33-footers, and we would go out there, and they would be, wanting to try something, but they didn't want to do it in front of us. We were sitting there right in front of them. And so they'd split the 2 boats up, one would go one direction, one would go the other direction. We'd have to choose which one to follow. And one particular day, we followed one boat, and we were trying to watch the other one in the way in the distance, and I realised that they were going super fast, and that was a little bit unusual. And that was probably when my first indication that there was something going on here, and they were in we suspected they were doing something with foiling, but we didn't know. And so really from there on, we were conscious. And with these development things with America's Cup, you have to move your own program forward. You can't worry about what the opposition's thinking all the time. Eventually you say, well, I'm going to back myself to stay in front because I'm already in front, and that's the way, and they did a good job there, Team New Zealand. So,
it was moving so fast, though, wasn't it? I mean, was there a slight sense of panic within Oracle?
I wouldn't say panic, but it was just a shift. We said, right, now we've got to look at the foiling path and the fully foiling path, not skimming, and. So, a lot of the designers just embrace that because they love it, a new challenge. And so that was sort of cool. And for me, it was interesting because it was a new frontier for me too. I hadn't done much foiling or foiling experience. but you just applied the same sort of principles that I have for all my other America's Cup sort of experiences in the past, and the designers would come up with different ideas and projects to work on, and the key really is to prioritise all the different projects, because they have too many of them. You haven't got enough time to take them all on. And they have pet projects they'd love to do, but you've got to figure out which ones you are going to be able to do in the time available. And I think that's where I had my experience and could, I was of value to the design team in my input and the looking at the big picture from the outside. After 2 races, we realised we were in deep trouble. And then all of a sudden, thinking, 8-5, hang on, we could probably win this.
What happened then, I guess, Murray, at some stage in that build-up to that cup, I mean, you picked up a pretty bad back injury. Is that right? What happened? And I mean, you couldn't sail, could you? No,
I actually, we went through this stage where we'd capsized and the Artemis boat broke up and Barth lost his life, and it was a terrible time for the America's Cup, that period. And so safety was paramount for all the teams. It was the number one thing. And so all the teams embarked on safety exercises and procedures, etc. And one of our things that we decided to do was, for personal safety, was wearing little air cylinders and things like this, and life jackets and back vests and things. And we went to a pool and jumped off a 10-metre diving platform, because that's like what will happen if you get ejected from the top side of a 72-foot catamaran if you capsize. And, full sailing clothes, life jackets and sailing boots. And I had these flat-sole sailing boots, and I hit the water from tempo, and it actually compression fracture on my vertebrae. And it was... at the time, it was weird, because I went into the water and I thought, wow, something's bad's happened here, and I wasn't even sure I'd be able to get back to the edge of the pool, but I did. And after some X-rays and stuff, I ended up having surgery on my back, and I was out. I couldn't even go out on the chase boat to watch the boats for 4 or 5 weeks. Fortunately, I got back, in the end, when, not long before the actual cup where we faced Team New Zealand, and sort of got back into watching the performance of the 2 boats.
What a mad accident. It's crazy, isn't it? I mean, and it pretty much put an end, Murray, to your cup sailing career. But how do you feel about that?
I mean, I knew it was coming. No, obviously not the accident, but I knew that the boats were getting, more and more physical to sail, and I'm getting older and older, and, I wasn't young. And the younger guys, we had a place on the boat, and I didn't really. I understood that, and you step aside, and you knew that this is the way the boats are going, and it started to become more and more of a young person's game, and actually even today, that's even more so than it was then.
Well, out on the water, I think minute for minute, the 2013 Cup is the most dissected sailing story on this podcast. From Jimmy, Ben Ainsley, Tom Slingsby, Carl Langford, John Macbeth, we've heard all of their versions, Russell too, and from Team New Zealand, Glenn Ashby, Dean Barker. What were you thinking during those opening races, Murray? What do you remember thinking about where the gains and losses were between the 2?
Well, we went into it not knowing where our strengths or weaknesses were going to be. We thought that, one team was going to be a little faster upwind and the other team was going to be a little faster downwind. But then after 2 races, we realised we were in deep trouble. And Team New Zealand was quick, and we had a lot of work to do. And yeah, so, you know, we didn't have much time. And as each race went by, we, you know, had a big task in front of us, you know. And, you know, when it got to the 8-1 stage or whatever it was, or close to it, you know, like even when it got to 6-1 or whatever it was, I don't know, we really thought that it was a challenge beyond what was possible, because they had to win one race and we had to win 9, you know, or 8. It was ridiculous, you know. It was one mistake and we're going, that was at the end. And so every day when we went out, eventually we, you know, I remember we basically had a meeting and said, righto, we've lost the cup. It's actually not gone completely, but we have to do everything we possibly can to give ourselves any chance whatsoever. There's no compromise, whatever. But we haven't got very much time, so we've only got time for, we made a big list, crossed off all the things we couldn't have time for, and these are things can do, and we just put every resource we could into doing whatever we could. But the interesting thing, I think, when we look back, we made improvements to the boat and the wing, and the biggest improvement we made to the boat speed was, I think, the technique of sailing the boat. And the interesting thing was, we were out on the chase boat, you know, watching the boat sail, and we've got all the numbers up on the screen in the chase boat, and we saw segments of the Oracle boat sailing during the races where we had phenomenal performance, you know, and we realised that we had to figure out how we can extend these little wee segments that we saw potential. And it was interesting because the way that the guys were sailing the boat, the feel of the boat obviously didn't translate to the performance. And so what they felt on board didn't relate to what we were seeing. And so they weren't sailing the boat quite how it should have been sailed. And that's where Russell really stepped in, and he basically said, this is, I think, how it's got to work, and we have to sail with these modes, and it should work because we've seen it in segments. And you know, for instance, when we tack, you're sailing upwind, we're learning to foil, you know, well upwind, and you had to put the bow down, build speed, and wait until you got to a certain speed before you put the bow back up, and all of a sudden the VMG upwind went through the roof. But you know, only for a minute or something, and then you're tacking again. But if you didn't do it, you were going like 4 knots slower or something like that. It was big numbers, and I think the guys on board would put the bow down, but then they would think, oh, we have to get back up on the wind and go, and they weren't patient enough to wait that extra 10 seconds to get that extra 4 knots of. It was incredible, the difference in performance. Yeah.
I mean, so much learning in such a short period of time. You know, when the winds started to come, you know, you were 8-1 down, and the winds just started to come. Did you actually think, oh my God, maybe we could win?
I know. I mean, once the winds started coming, it was a sort of like a bit of a joke, really. We thought, man, I mean, it got to 8-3 or something like that, and we were sort of thinking, you know, we're getting good now, and we went from like losing 3/4 of a boat length every tack relative to Team New Zealand to gaining, you know, after 3 or 4 races, our tacking technique, and we were gaining 3/4 length on Team New Zealand, towards the end, every tack we did and things like that, we just made massive gains, just step by step. And, we sort of think, we've survived another day, and then the next day it came to 8-4, and we survived another day. When we'd have a beer after the race and think, oh my God, we've got another life. And then all of a sudden, thinking 8-5, hang on, we could probably win this. And, and we just got faster and faster and faster. And in the end, I think our platform, everything aerodynamically was actually better than the Team New Zealand platform. And so our potential was actually higher. And I think if we'd kept racing for another 5 or 6 races, we would have just kept on winning as well. We'd sort of just come from way behind to level to pass them. But that was just the development curve of those sort of boats. It was exciting as hell.
Yeah, amazing. I mean, everyone we've spoken to about it from Team Oracle have kind of a story from inside the shed, about a kind of a moment. Can you pinpoint a moment? Did Russell Coutts stand on a chair in the middle of a room with hundreds of people? And, was there a moment where you kind of felt you could turn it round?
I mean, Russell's not that sort of guy that he stands up and says, look, this is
how did you turn it around?
The way we're going to do it. I mean, I know him very, very well. And so I'm sitting in a meeting, I know he's decided on something already, and he's finding a way of saying it to the group, hoping that it's going to be someone else's suggestion, and he plants ideas to the meeting that someone else may suggest it. That's the way he works. It's incredible team sort of way of operating, steers all the brains around, and he's figured it out, way before everyone else. And but then he in that case, we had no more lives left, and so he got a bit stronger and said, okay guys, this is the way we've got to operate.
What an extraordinary story. I mean, what are your memories of the celebration? Finally, my God, against the odds, it's done.
It was sort of unbelievable, really, that we actually had pulled it off, because it got to the stage we didn't think we were going to. Yeah. We thought it was lost. Yeah. But then, pressure's a funny thing, because then the other side, we're making steady improvements, and then the pressure gets to the other side and they start making mistakes, and they made a few big ones, and that's really contributed to us winning. Not only the good things that we did, it was the errors they made, and that came from pressure probably.
Yeah, that's sport, that's why we love it. Well, next up, this is extraordinary. You were brought into Team New Zealand for the Bermuda Cup in 2017 as a performance coach. And we all know now Pete Burling's, won the cup a couple of times. But back then, he was a kid, wasn't he? After the team had been through such a crushing loss, Pete coming in, still so young, huge amount of responsibility on his shoulder. What was that like to be working with him, but also to be back in the Team New Zealand fold? That never happens.
Yeah, it was interesting, really, for me, because I'd sort of finished that cup with Oracle, and I decided, that was my last cup. I don't need to do any more. I've done enough. And then Team New Zealand asked me to come and help them in a performance coach sort of role. It wasn't right at the beginning, like a lot of the stuff was already in place, and so I came in the last 9 months or something like that. And it was sort of like a breath of fresh air for me, and I sort of went in to think, it's got nothing to lose. It's a short time, and it'll be a bit of fun. And it was interesting because, at that stage we'd sailed against Grant Dalton for a long time, and you could say we weren't mates or anything like that, but I you know, in the end, I actually got on quite well with them, and I enjoyed it, and you know, and it was a great team, and very interesting for me because coming in at quite a late stage, seeing what they had in place, the first, you know, month, I sort of was just listening and attending the meetings and getting myself up to speed. And, you know, I realised that they'd developed a simulator for which they were using as a tool for the design of the foils primarily, a little bit for racing skills, but really for their design of their foils, the elevators, rudders, stuff like that. And it was so efficient, it blew me away that how much work you could do in such a short period of time. You know, you sit there on the simulator, a couple of guys sailing 2 boats, basically on the Bermuda course, you change some elevators on one of the simulator boats and they'd sail around, and after an hour you'd have a result that this elevator was better around the course than this one, tacking, manoeuvring, everything, straight line. Same with the foils and all that. And you could go through so many iterations of different things. I'm just thinking, wow. And then, you know, because to design, build and test takes months. And we're doing all these things in hours. And the tool was so developed that it actually worked out to be reliable. And when we started sailing the boat a lot, it verified the tools. And when we got to Bermuda and started sailing with other boats, we were very confident that that things were going pretty well. And I remember I went to Bermuda at one stage to have a little spy on the teams that were already there. I think we might have been shipping or something like that. And Russell was based in Bermuda at that stage, and I rang him up and said, well, let's have dinner, you know. So we went to dinner and we were chatting about like that. And I said, look, I think we're going to win the cup, you know, Team New Zealand. I said, and he goes, really, you know? And I said, yeah. I said, I think we're going to win it, you know. Anyway, at the end of the cup, when we won, you know, we were in a celebration and they were having a beer over at Oracle. I said, oh, I'll come over and have a beer with you guys, you know, and I went and have a beer with them. And he says, yeah, you were right. He says, it was pretty slick, yeah.
And what about coaching Pete? I mean, you know, all that chat going into Bermuda was Pete's match racing skills, wasn't it? Getting off the start line against Jimmy Spittle, how tough it would be. You know, how did you work with him? I mean, he's an extraordinary talent, isn't it? I mean, what did you bring to the table coaching wise there?
Well, I think an overview and some experience and a little bit of experience in match racing. Obviously, I'd done lots of match racing and I'd sort of know the procedure, and Pete and the other guys had done very, very little match racing. They just didn't have that experience to draw on, you know, like, for instance, you know, Russell, when he won his cups as a helmsman, he had won multiple world championships and probably hundreds of match racing regattas. And Pete had done none, really. And I think, you know, they sort of battled with the positioning and the start, and still sort of had the mentality which will be okay. But we sort of weren't okay, and we were losing the majority of our starts. So in the end, you know, I was pretty nervous about it, and Yeah, so we looked at the statistics. I thought, well, how are we going to deal with this? Because these guys are young and super good sailors, and how do I say to them that we're maybe not as good as we think we are? And so we dug out some statistics of all the starts as much as we could and tried to illustrate that we have got a problem because we are losing a lot of our starts, and that's making it very difficult to win races, and we were losing some races. And we shouldn't have been losing races because we were faster than all the other boats. Well, I thought we were faster, and the team was confident we were. And so, so it sort of came to a head, really. We said, right, let's change things. And from that day, we admitted that basically we did have a problem and we had to address it, and we would change. And from that day onwards, we started winning starts, and it was just a different world. And then we had a fast boat, and we were starting at least equal, but yeah.
Yeah, and
that was the turning point. Yeah,
it was being the elephant in the room, I guess. But they listened to you.
Yeah, well, that was good. They respected me and they listened, and that was, it was awesome. Yeah.
I read an article the other day that stated you rated Russell Coutts as the best skipper you've ever sailed with. It was a modern article, but in your career, you've sailed with Jimmy, Ben Ainsley, he was an Oracle, as was Tom Slingsby, neither steering, of course. You've also obviously worked with Pete. That's quite a lot of the modern Cup talent. Who do you rate amongst the modern Cup skippers? What are their strengths and weaknesses?
Interesting. Difficult question. Obviously, Pete Burling's a super talent, and very smart guy. In some ways quite similar to Russell in the way he's got a very quick mind. He can process things very quickly, and I think that's a big advantage especially when you're sailing these boats at a high speed and you have to make decisions quickly. Very good at that, and that's what's one of Russell's strengths. Tom Slingsby, I think an incredible natural sailor, awesome. And I think a very good team player, good team person, and I think he's a big strength for the American Magic team. Yeah, huge. So I don't, they're competitive. They're all really super competitive people, proven themselves, all of them, in their own areas. I think one of the big things it's with the America's Cup. It's not about necessarily just being the best sailor. It's being a very good team person and how you can lead a team or contribute to the team in a very good way that actually makes a difference, I think. And that's why I say I think Russell is still the best ever. That he's just got it all, he's the best leader, and I think he understands the design aspects of the boats better than still any of the sailors out there, I think, now. And, his experience is, the others haven't, I reckon they still haven't got as wide an experience as he has, because he's done so much in such a wide variety of boats. Obviously things are changing now when it's becoming predominantly foiling and faster and faster. These guys are, as I said before, it's a young man's game, and it's going to get younger and younger.
What do you make of the modern Cup scenario? Auckland 2020 was the first Cup you'd missed for decades, wasn't it? What did you think of the foiling monohulls there?
It's a different game. You have the courses where you've got boundaries, and so you've got to figure out your strategy of almost before you start, where you're going to start to the left or the right, because you're going to hit a boundary in the 30 seconds or whatever it is, and you're going to have to both tack, and then how many tacks are we going to do on this beat, and how many jibes, and rather than, we're going to, you're not going to take a shift because you're going so fast that attacking's expensive or the driving's expensive. So it's minimising manoeuvres is sort of what it comes to, and your strategy at the start. It's almost the race starts at your first boundary where you tack off the first boundary where you are relative to the other boat. So you can start to the right of the guy, but then you're in a good position for your long tack when you're sailing till the next boundary. So it's sort of an interesting situation, but it's a totally different game to the way it was. Yeah.
Yeah. What about a cup up in Barcelona? We both sailed the Olympics there a while ago. It's a tricky sailing venue, isn't it? I mean, how do you think that's going to work out?
I think the sea state is going to be the most difficult thing. Barcelona, you think Mediterranean, it's a nice lighter venue, but it can get very rough there, and you can actually get pretty big waves, and that will be difficult. Obviously, all the teams know that, and they're trying to invest as much time as they can sailing in these wavy conditions. And I think the teams that master that the best, because it'll impact their foil designs and everything. They've and full selection on a day with the sea state. So that'll be an interesting factor in the Cup.
Yeah, I mean, you've had a pretty stellar career, haven't you, Murray? I mean, it's still racing hard at the highest level, but all those Cup appearances, all those Cup wins, Cup match race wins too. I mean, what do you think when you look back on what you've achieved? What kind of satisfaction does that give you?
I mean, it does give you satisfaction, that I feel like I've sort of been privileged to work with such fantastic teams, and I've such enjoyed being part of the team and the teamwork. I think that is the most satisfying thing is being part of the team and working together and meeting fantastic people. More so than the wins and that, but obviously the wins that makes you, the whole experience enjoyable. And then people, it's easy to sail with the best people because they all want to sail in the best teams.
Just lastly, I'm going to go back to my chat with Gemma, your daughter. I mean, she said a couple of things when she was describing you that I picked up on. It was funny. She said, my dad, he's a sailing dictionary. But she also commented that you just love sailing. I mean, she actually said he loves sailing. He's a sailor in a very kind of matter-of-fact way. Like there's nothing else you would have wanted to be. Is that a good assessment of your character, Murray?
Well, I mean, I do love sailing, and that's why I'm still doing it now, today, like I don't have to, but I enjoy the racing even now, and the challenge of sailing the different boats that I'm sailing today. So, I really enjoy it. I mean, there's a lot of sports I'm not very good at, and I think that's why I like sailing so much, because I am good at it.
Murray Jones, America's Cup Hall of Famer, multiple Cup winner. It's been such a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
I'm pretty sure, like me, you'll have been fascinated listening to Murray look back over his career. I mean, such amazing insight into how to deliver success. So I have to say a massive, massive thanks to Murray for his time, his patience and his honesty. And again to his daughter Gemma for giving us a little insight into the man she calls dad and at times coach. I also want to say a quick thanks to Jimmy Spittle. Jimmy's been on the podcast before, obviously, but if I ever need any insight into someone I may not know too well, he's always very generous with his time and doesn't mind putting some thoughts down in an email to give us a few thoughts on time spent, in this instance, with Murray at Oracle Team USA. So thanks again, Jimmy. I do have to also say a quick thanks as well to Sophia Urban at Alinghi Red Bull Racing and Hamish Hooper from Emirates Team New Zealand, who uncovered some brilliant photos of Murray. As you can imagine, they're both pretty busy at the moment, so a huge thanks. So that's it for this month. Until next time, if you're enjoying what you hear, do buy us a coffee or two. It is super easy. So head over to buymeacoffee.com/sailing podcast and do your bit to help us bring you these uninterrupted ad-free chats from the biggest names in our sport. Before we go, the usual thanks to Tim at Vertigo Films. He's currently beyond busy in Barcelona, so I really appreciate him making time to deliver these podcasts. Tim, a massive thank you as ever. If you'd like, keep in touch. I love hearing from you all. I'm Shirley Sail on Instagram and Twitter, and Shirley Robertson on Facebook. So let us know what you think, what you'd like to hear more of, and also where you're listening. That's all from us for this month. Thank you so much for listening. Have fun on the water and sail safe, everyone.
Lane line is on boundary up ahead, 35 seconds out.
A bit lower and faster here. Lower and faster here.
Ho, ho, ho. That's a good one, Jimmy.
Gaining on the lane line.
We're looking at 10.5 to 42. Matching him on the boundary, yeah. Copy.
This is Castle 1 standing by. Out.